First of all, I wanted to talk a little bit about tips for writing and anonymizing the report. And the reason why is, we have done all this work on creating this wonderful report and we want to share it. But with DNA, we have the living people, we have the privacy issues. And so we really do need to think of really good ways to anonymize it. So it's still very helpful for people so they can still read it and understand what's going on. So, one of the first things that I wanted to talk about was when you are writing your report, it's really important at the beginning of it or the beginning of your DNA section, wherever you have your DNA, whether you have DNA at the beginning or the middle or the end. And in the lesson on writing reports, we talk about how you can, you know, organize your report. But whenever you start talking about DNA, you want to have some type of a diagram like this one that's really showing your test taker's line of descent from the research subject. So I want to point out a couple things here. This was a project where I was trying to connect my Hickman Monroe Schultz to Martin S. Schultz. And I had four different people who were my test takers. And I'm using that term test takers to mean people whose tests I have access to. Now, it could be that you have asked someone to take a test, or it could be that they are just on, for instance, these people were all on Ancestry and they shared their Ancestry DNA results with me. So I could actually look at their matches as well as the matches of myself. And so these are all people that we consider test takers because we can look at their matches as well. So I just wanted to clarify that. That's kind of a tricky thing. So what I have done here is obtained permission from all these people to use their names in anything that I do with DNA. And one of the things you can do is when you first ask them to share their DNA results with you, is ask them at the same time. If I am going to be publishing this, how do you feel about me using your name and putting that in reports and such or for presentations? And then you'll find out right away if they would prefer you don't use their name or if it's totally fine if you use their name. And so that's something that you need to keep in mind. And it's good to find out right when you have them share their results or ask them to take the test. So you'll know exactly what's going on with privacy for these key people that you're going to be working with. So you can see here that I have got two people who are a generation closer than me and my cousin Patty. And so I often use cousin Lucretia's DNA because she's through my direct line here, William Houston Schultz, and she's a generation closer. So in this project that I did with Martin Schultz and Hickman Monroe Schultz, I put all of the children in of um, Martin Schultz, all the known children. And then using Lucretia, I put her in red because she is the main test taker. I'm comparing all these people to her results. I found using Throughline's list, the people who had the best matches, the highest amount of DNA shared, and I plugged them into this chart. And so you can see down here that I have a little title to this figure. DNA matches for test taker Lucretia Becker Neal through siblings of Hickman Monroe Schultz. So here's Hickman, here are his siblings, and we are looking at Lucretia's matches. So these people all are her DNA matches. So we want to make a clear distinction between the test taker and the DNA matches. So sometimes one of the things that can trip us up is to call all these people testers because in reality they are. They've all taken the test, but we've got to somehow differentiate between people whose results we have access to, like in the previous diagram and Lucretia, and then the people who are matches with our test takers. So we've settled on using that term test taker, and you may see that a little bit differently used with other people's presentations, but it's important in our reports that we're really clear on what we have going on here. So I do a lot of editing of reports of my research team and in our study group and the course. And so this is just something I've noticed that can be a little confusing for the reader. And of course, for ourselves, we want to be really clear when we look at this report down the road. We want to remember exactly what we were doing here. So there's some different ideas you can use to anonymize. In this one, you can see that I have taken the name of the child of Sarah and Martin. And so Delilah becomes Delilah 1. And then Susan becomes Susan 1. And if I were to expand this chart and say I had 3 more good matches that came down through Delilah's line, they could be Delilah 1, 2, and 3. And so you can do something like that. I really like this because it reminds me of the descent, the line of descent, who the child is that they are coming through. So this is one of my favorite ways to do that. But there are other ways. You can use your imagination for how you want to anonymize. One of the things you want to do, though, is always make a key for yourself so you know exactly who these people are. So you'd want to keep in a spreadsheet or perhaps an Airtable, whatever you're using, a key that, oh, Delilah 1 is actually, Susan Jones, whatever her name is. The other thing you could do, and I didn't do it here, is have these be color coded for male or female if you thought that made a difference or if that was important to note whether they were male or female, because obviously the name doesn't tell you anything since it's just a descendant of that person. Now, here's a way that one of my researchers did this for a client, which I really thought this was very interesting. Oh, sorry, that's the next slide. This one is going back to the previous project. So something that I also did was to put all of these people into a table, put them into a matrix table. So you can see here are the different DNA matches. There's Delilah, Susan, Eccles, Paulina. These are all the people I showed you were DNA matches to Lucretia, and I put in how much they shared with Lucretia. But then I also wanted to compare against my other test takers, who were Patricia, Lester, and myself. So then, because I have access to their DNA results, I could go check, and I could see that I actually only matched up with Delilah. I didn't match with anybody else. I'm a generation further back, so I just didn't share as much. But look at this. Patricia, she actually shared quite a bit. And then Lester shared different people. This just really shows the randomness of DNA inheritance. But I wanted to show that because all of us, these test takers, shared at least a little bit with these different matches, we were forming a genetic network. And so this is a tool that I like to use for looking at getting a big, nice genetic network and comparing across several different test takers. So that is a tool you can use. Hopefully that makes sense to you how I did that with this. And probably looking at this, I maybe would clarify, I think in the narrative I had clarified that these were my primary test takers here. We always want to have good narrative before our tables and charts and sometimes after to really clearly say what we are doing. Now, here's the other example of anonymizing I wanted to show you. And in this one, we used letters. So we used A1, A2, A3, A4, A5. And the reason why is because this project involves several groups of DNA matches, several different clusters coming down. And so we used A to designate an A group. And then the diagram had a table that was associated with it. So you could see we have A1, A2, A3, A4. The total shared DNA, here is our test taker here. And then the hypothesized relationship, and then the predicted range to see if that was within range. So now in this case, there was a citation in the narrative that said, see Appendix A for all of these generational links. And in a proof argument, you've got to somehow show that you have checked these links and that this truly is the path back to the ancestor. So in the appendix, we had sources for, I believe there are 4 or 5 different groups, complete groups genetic networks. And you can see here how the sources are all put in here for the different people in that figure. So the appendix had all of this detail. It wasn't in the body of the report because that would certainly muddy up the report, wouldn't it? And so I thought that was a really, really good way to handle that. And this is why we had group A, because there were several groups for this proof argument. So what you have to do is look at your research and think about what makes the most sense. This was a proof argument. We had all these different groups, so it made sense to give them all just this blanket A1, A2, A3, and A4. But there can be other ways you can do that. And perhaps you will think of something that you like even better than anything that I've shown you. So any questions or thoughts about that before we go on to our next topic?
There is a question about what kind of citation you need to have. A citation just showing their name, or what do you mean?
Okay, let's take a look at these a little bit more in depth. So for different, you can see the different kind of sources. So we wrote here for this connection here, see the text. So this must have been fully cited within the text and the narrative. Perhaps this was the main line, but then some of the collateral lines, we've got some things that are just simple. I mean, we've got censuses, 1850 census, 1850 census, 1860 census, a lot of censuses, and we can do that. We can use those in our work in proving these genetic networks or proving these lines back. We know that we don't have relationships before 1880 specifically noted, but when we have a body of evidence, that can really help us having them at least by name, such as the 1850 census. So I'm not sure if I answered that question, but that's basically what we're showing back
Yeah,
here.
I
Yeah,
mean, the source needs to show evidence of the parent-child relationship, right? So it can't be just like, oh, this person existed. It should be more than that.
you've got to show something. And the nice thing about a census is it does put them in a family group. And that's very helpful because you've got this whole group of people that are
Right,
connected.
yeah. And, if you can't use a census that shows relationships directly, you can still use, an 1850 census plus another record that both
Right.
lead you to the conclusion that this was a family grouping.
Exactly.
Here's another question. Is it okay to insert line breaks in citations so that some pieces are more easily viewed, like the URL?
Well, this one just automatically does that. So if you've typed in your citation and then you hyperlink this, after you type this in or copy this in, if you hit your space bar, this will hyperlink, and then it will automatically just pop it down to a new line. So you don't have to do that. You can see here that there's no space there, and so this one didn't get hyperlinked. So I usually like to put that in. It really depends on your preference on if you want to hyperlink, something in a report. So I'll also note here with this citation, I would have taken everything out past this question mark because you can leave it and it will still get you to the place before the question mark. So just little technical things. We all do things a little bit differently, but that's what I would probably do. So yeah, you want to just make sure it's legible and easy to see, easy to read. She's doing sources for figure 4. So a typical citation, you'd have the little number. So for instance, if we were trying to cite something on here, maybe using citations, for each person, you maybe would have the little 1, and then you'd have the footnote number 1. But because this is in the appendix and this is something a little bit different, this is just explaining for this person, this is the source.